All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another Monday, an exciting week ahead of us, and a brand new episode of Boxed Lunch here at the Fort Worth Community Arts Center. Very excited with our guest today, the one and only Dennis Yslas. How you doing today, Dennis?
Hey, I'm just delightful.
Awesome. Well, we are so
Welcome to my
glad.
garage.
It looks better than most kitchens in the houses. I have to say, I'm just uber impressed with your layout there. I might have you come and do some renovations on my garage.
I feel like I need a disclaimer. We're in the midst of a massive remodel of our house, and we actually had a garage with an attached studio built, and that's where we're living while they're actually renovating the main house. We started this in December, mid-December of last year, so we're down to the final stretch of this build, and so we needed to live back here for about 5 to 6 months. Behind me, behind the camera, we have refrigerator, TV, washer, dryer, tons of stuff back there. So this looks really, really nice. We won't turn the camera around.
So we've talked a lot about art in a pandemic. What is renovation in a pandemic like?
It's really interesting because this was finished in May, end of May, and we moved in here May 28th. So we had a couple of months in the midst of the pandemic that we were living in our other house, and our builder is wonderful, and they actually were very informative and said because it's considered infrastructure, everything will continue as normal. The biggest difference was we couldn't have more than one trade on site at a time. So the electrician could be here, but nobody else could be here. And if the electrician came in, he could have a crew of 2 or 3 people, but they had to be 6 feet apart. So all of that was just really, it's been interesting. Once they started tearing down the house, I say literally tearing down the house, tearing down the inside of the house, the rules started getting a little bit lax. And I say lax, we started occupancy, etc. So they've continued, but last week we had like 4 trades in the house at one time. We had the tile, electricity, plumbing, trim. It was just crazy. They're all still social distancing. Most of them, thank goodness, are family-owned companies, and they actually are family members living in the same household or in the same bubble. So they're actually working together. Like the tile people, it's 2 brothers that own it, and they actually live in the same house. So, yeah.
Wow. Just, one more thing to look forward to amidst a crazy year.
Yes, exactly.
Now, Dennis, we know each other. I know you're housed in the same building that I am, and we've passed each other from a 6-foot distance a couple of times this last year. Will you do me a favor and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do for the people that are watching today?
Sure. My name is Dennis Yslas. I am actually an actor, director, and I consider myself an arts administrator. I'm the executive director for Texas Nonprofit Theaters. Texas Nonprofit Theaters is a service organization for all theaters across the state. We actually, a nonprofit is somewhat of a misnomer. There are several for-profit theaters that are members of our organization. We provide different types of services like a lending library, a script lending library. We have a library of over 3,000 scripts, and you can literally, as a member, say, hey, I want 5 scripts so that I can read and see what I want to do for my next season, or I want to prepare for an audition coming up and I don't have that script, and we may have that title, so you can check that out free of charge. Literally the only thing that it costs you is your postage. We also provide an internship for theaters and for student members. So a theater can have an intern over the summer for 5 weeks free of charge to them. All they need to do is provide housing, and we provide the intern. They actually interview the intern and get to choose the intern to stay with them. We've been providing that service for almost 25 years now.
Wow.
Last year was our first year to provide it during a pandemic, as everybody, providing anything over a pandemic. And so it was really an interesting process. The students learned a lot more about running a theater as opposed to producing, and mainly it's about producing. So it was actually very informative for the students. They were like, I learned more than I thought I was going to learn because of the pandemic. We actually did have several theaters that said, we just don't have anything for them. So we can't host an intern, but we've been doing that for almost 25 years. We provide a whole bunch of other services. Like I actually will give board trainings, do a board retreat, talk about bylaws, talk about customer service, help with your model. A lot of theaters ask me, okay, this is the model that we've been using for many years. What's actually more popular, or what's an opportunity or we're looking at it for an opportunity to change our model. And so I talk to them about that. I actually have a theater that I'm going to be going to in a couple of weeks, literally going on site and doing a board retreat for their new board members. So, so we provide all kinds of those, all of those services. All of those services are free of charge. So, yeah.
Nice. Approximately how many Texas theaters are in the organization?
We actually average about 300 member theaters. There's about 500 theaters across the state. A lot of theaters aren't incorporated necessarily. They just produce stuff, and
Right.
so they feel that they can't be members, and that's not true. Anybody can be a member. We even have individual memberships, and we provide some individual services, like we provide auditions across the state. We also are looking at beefing up our resource library, and our resource library is going to provide some designer opportunities. So a theater will be looking for a designer, and you can actually go in there as a member and see what opportunities are out there. We're looking at a logo library where a graphic designer can say, hey, I created this logo for this theater, and this entire logo portfolio, and I want to make it available to other theaters. All they need to do is credit me, and here's my bio. They can get that free of charge. We're looking at that. So we're looking at different options like that.
Wow, it's just some fantastic resources there for sure. So before we delve into the interview and stuff, what's on your lunch menu today?
Well, I am an intermittent faster, so I do intermittent fasting. I eat all of my calories within a specified time frame, and today I'm eating my calories within 6 hours. So my first meal is going to happen here in a few minutes. And so my first meal generally is strawberries, yogurt, and granola. And so I'm going to show you how I spice it up. And I also made a green tea latte with my Keurig. So
delicious. You're putting me on the hook here, Mr. Healthy. I'm having a toasted meatloaf sandwich. So
well, that sounds good, though.
It will be yummy. We made some meatloaf last night, and I'm trying to make the most of those leftovers. So I'll be fixing it grilled cheese style, and I've got my bread buttered and my meatloaf sliced. So I'm going to turn my skillet on and heat the butter. And while I'm doing that and we start prepping our lunch, what is the state of theater in Texas today?
The state of theater in Texas is kind of crazy because we're such a large state, and we have so many different styles of theaters, different theater sizes and venues. We have theaters that have been producing shows during the pandemic since May.
Wow.
And they are social distance. We had one theater, one of the first theaters that opened across the country. They actually have a judge as one of their patrons, and the judge said, I think y'all should open when the movie theaters should open. And they said, okay, what do you think we should do? And they said, if you do these things, I'll say it's okay. And so it's a small theater outside of Baytown, and they actually have been producing, and they have about 50 people in their audience. It's generally about 100 people. They generally seat about 100 people, but they've been safe. They do packaged concessions. They're really great. But we also have the other spectrum of theaters like the Alley Theater, Dallas Theater Center, the bigger theaters, the equity theaters that are not exactly sure when they're going to open next. I remember we actually do webinars called Texas Theater Town Hall, and we did our first one in June, and we interviewed somebody from the Alley Theater, and the Alley was saying, oh, we're going to open in September. Well, of course, all that changed. So they actually aren't producing anything with any frequency inside. Now, there's a lot of theaters that are doing cabarets. There's a lot of people doing outdoor theater, and that seems to be really, really popular. Cleburne Plaza Theater in Cleburne is actually doing drive-in theaters. So you stay in your car, you put your radio to your car radio to an FM station, and they will produce a show out in their parking lot, and you can watch it and keep your windows rolled up. And I think several other theaters in Fort Worth have done the exact same thing. So so everybody is being innovative. There's other theaters that are doing Sunday night cabarets, and they're streaming them. There's a lot of streaming going on right now. Philosophically, there's a lot of live theaters that are saying, we don't want to stream because that's not us. Right. That is radio, TV, film. That's their thing. That's not who we are. And I think everybody is trying to respect everybody's boundaries. When you live in an area like Dallas-Fort Worth, you're going to find every opportunity to see any kind of opportunity to see some sort of theater. You know, Mainstage Irving Las Colinas is streaming real shows in a theater, you know, social distance, and everybody is wearing a mask except the actors. They did a show where a husband and wife team were the two actors on stage. But you go down the road and there's a theater doing a full production on stage, with social distancing, and I say full production. They may have 4 or 5 people, but it's still a full production, and everybody in the audience is masked. So you run the gamut. There are theaters in South Texas that are like, what's going on? We don't know exactly what to do, and that's one of the reasons we do our Texas Theater Town Halls. We do those mainly so that people can talk to other people. Theater professionals can talk to other theater professionals and say, what's going on, what's working, what isn't working, right? You know, so yeah, so I think it's a very diverse, it's diverse group of theaters trying to all do something. There's a lot of theaters that are just closed, especially those theaters that don't have a home venue. If they try to go to different venues, they're met with different restrictions, and they're like, we just can't do it. So,
wow, it's so interesting. You know, we took part of some of those town halls as well, and there was some great information. I know that the general public might have a perception that some of the holdups in producing are attendance size. Also the spacing, social distancing, and masks in the theater. What are some of the concerns and issues that the general public may not necessarily be aware of in terms of some of the challenges that these theaters are facing, trying to get over some of these hurdles?
The first big one really that comes to mind is the fact that we have a lot of theaters that use union actors. And right now, Actors Equity Association is not granting contracts to very many theaters. There's a handful of theaters across the country that are using equity actors, but they have very strict guidelines to get approved to have a contract, to have an actor on stage. And so that's a big factor that a lot of theaters that are equity theaters are struggling with, because the general public doesn't generally understand what the difference is between a union actor and a non-union actor. So a theater like Uptown Players is like, we can do some shows in, you know, social distance and streaming, but we can't really bring an audience in because we're in Dallas-Fort Worth, and Dallas-Fort Worth has a massive case count right now. And that's one of the big things with equity. You have to have a decline in your cases. So I think it's a challenge. That's one big challenge. Another one is money. Live theaters across the state, across the world, across the globe have struggled just to stay alive before a pandemic. They were always asking for money. There's many theaters that were like, we make money from one show to survive to the next show. So they survive show to show, kind of like you hear people say, we're surviving paycheck to paycheck. They're surviving show to show. And that's kind of hard when you have no income coming in.
Right.
So that's a big challenge, and theaters are asking more often for money. And one of the big things I get is, how can I ask for money again? Yeah. Because I asked for money in April and May, but now I got to ask again, because we're in November and
Yeah.
we're running out of money, or our savings are gone, or we didn't have savings. You know, so it's really one of those things that the general public doesn't understand, why the theater is asking for money. And it's the onus is a lot on the management of the theater, the management staff. The management staff has to be eloquent enough to give a good narrative to the donor, to say, here's the situation, we can't produce, we need money, here's why, and please help.
Wow, what a challenge! You know, it's so interesting to hear about the equity status and some of the struggles that they are going to. I know that some of the articles are claiming now that health insurance is going to be a big concern coming up. There's also some talk about equity film and equity stage are in negotiations about trying to clarify that line. What is a film?
Yeah.
And what is a play? So it's quite interesting to hear how everyone's an actor, but depending on if you're being captured by a person's eye or a camera eye, that really does make a difference as to where those funds, where that is all playing out. Do you see them communicating with each other in terms of Actors Equity and Screen Guild? Are they trying to work this out? Are they having any success, or are they still pretty balled up?
Well, disclaimer, I am a member of Actors Equity Association, have been for 20 years. But so yeah, there's a big discussion, because Equity has always had an agreement with SAG-AFTRA, the Screen Actors Guild, American Federation of Television and Radio Artists. They've always had an agreement that if I'm doing a live production and I have to tape the show or go do a morning show, for example, to promote my play, I will get compensated according to these rules, the equity rules. Well, we're now in a completely different world, because now we're doing full shows that are going to be produced and are going to live out in the internet forever. So the difference is, Equity is saying, we don't want these shows to be available forever. We want them to be available for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever, a limited run. And SAG-AFTRA is saying, but you can say they're not available, but you can always make them available. So I don't know exactly. They're trying to talk. They're both fighting against each other. You can go on Twitter and see the Twitter fights. Just literally just find the hashtag SAG-AFTRA or Equity, and you'll see the fights. Personally, I think that both organizations really want to find a solution that works for everybody. And many actors are members of both unions, so they're also caught between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah, it is a very interesting situation. You know, being primarily a stage actor and producer myself, I would always hear people say, you know, well, why can't we tape the show? And, you know, why aren't we allowed to capture this? And I think a lot of people are starting to understand that while it may seem very similar, it really is quite a different beast as far as theater and film. And it's been really something, you know. They were quiet for a long time whenever this all first started. And so it's been really interesting to see how they've come together, and then again, some of the struggles that they still face. So are the theaters in Texas, in general anyway, are they frustrated? Are they supportive of these challenges? I know that not everybody uses equity performers, so that isn't the only hurdle that they have. And I ask this to you because I know that you've done all kinds of stuff, directing, performing, producing yourself. What's the hardest role in all of this? Is it just being able to stay in character with a mask on? Is it the choreographer trying to figure out how to put 20 jets in a room 6 feet apart? Or is it really just continuing to unite production teams to have those visions? What do you consider to be the hardest thing in terms of producing in a pandemic?
Realistically, right now, is making sure everybody is safe. I get calls all week, every day, it seems like, saying, what can we do to make the show safe? I'm like, I'm not a medical professional. I can only guide you and tell you this is what other theaters are doing. There was a theater in Fort Stockton, Texas, that did a Western and everybody wore masks.
Oh.
And they were like, this is how we're getting around this. But
Right.
you consider that the average patron for any theater anywhere across the globe is 60 years of age or higher.
Yep.
They're already in a high risk group. Many of them don't want to stay home, but they certainly don't want to get sick. And so they want an opportunity to watch a show as safely as possible. So if the onus is on the theater to try to offer some kind of a safety, a safe environment for them. And that's really the toughest thing. One theater was saying, I know that we need a new air conditioning system, but we were barely making it before. There's no way we're going to get a new air conditioning system that allows us to filtrate the air better for the shows. So and they're actually in a retirement area in Central Texas. And they're like, we have 90% of our patrons live in a retirement community, you know? So, but then you have another theater right down the road in Fredericksburg, who's been producing regularly since, I want to say July.
Wow.
So now they did something that was kind of interesting to help build goodwill with their donors. They actually provided grocery delivery to a lot of their patrons. So they actually said, we're going to go one step further. You don't have to pay us like you have to pay your grocery Instacart or whatever, or shipped or whatever. You just let us know. We'll go pick it up and we'll take care of it for you. Don't you worry about it. And that was one great way to build goodwill. Then they would be able to go a few months later and say, hey, can you give us $10,000? And the patrons are understanding that this is a pandemic. They understand. And I think the hardest thing is, how can we keep people safe? So yeah, I mean, producing and all that stuff, trying to find the right show, keep everybody, mask, no mask, how are you going to build a set, etc. All that is difficult, but safety seems to be the highest priority. Because if I feel unsafe going somewhere, I'm not going to go.
Exactly. And, I find it so interesting to hear you say that safety is indeed the main concern for a lot of these theaters. And that kind of segues into my next question. I know that at the beginning of this, there was a lot of clamoring for leadership outside of our own artistic circles. And now here we are 11 months later, learning some things, having some practices in place. There is a great program that I'd like for you to talk a little bit about helping empower some of the producers and people inside of the theaters as to what they should be aware of. I think it's a great point that you mentioned that we're not medical professionals. And so to be able to try to validate policies and procedures in the midst of a pandemic is proving to be quite challenging. I skipped that class in college, and fortunately, it sounds like now things are starting to come out to help empower us, inform us, and to help lead us. I'm speaking specifically about the COVID compliance training that is now starting to come out, along with some pandemic preparation. Do you mind talking a little bit about those programs?
Not at all. So the film TV industry started backup producing in late July, August, because they're like, we can produce in a bubble. And we'll put that in air quotes. Tyler Perry has a studio outside of Atlanta. He said, you know what? I can produce shows. We have sets. We have dormitories. Everybody comes in, they quarantine for 14 days. Then we produce full on, just like we normally would, having everything brought in. And then the shows will be done in 3 weeks or whatever. And then you're gone. The next show comes in and does the same thing. So this producing in a bubble has been very, very popular. One of the things that came out of that was the COVID compliance officer training. This is training somebody to be a staff member of a production team that actually manages PPE, temperatures. They're not a medical professional, but they are a person that says, this person is safe to perform. This person is safe to step on set. This person is okay to do, etc. The COVID compliance officer is actually one of the things that several of my friends have gotten certified in, and I started researching that, and Texas Nonprofit Theaters actually offers a discount for members to take the training with a 20% discount. The thing about that is we can use it in the live theater sector a little bit differently than they do in the film and TV industry. In the live theater sector, we could have a person, aside from a stage manager, that's checking everybody's temperature, logging activity right before everybody steps onto the backstage area, so that the stage manager can do their job, the production manager can do their job, but you have this COVID compliance officer that's marking everything down. You still have your props person cleaning all the props. You still have the costume person steaming and doing everything they need to do to keep their stuff safe. But all of that is recorded by somebody. And so several theaters have started using this because they see benefit in having another person, whether it be a volunteer or a paid person according to your budget. It actually helps alleviate the stress from the production team about worrying, okay, I'm now the director of this show, but I need to make sure that everybody is 6 feet apart, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, so that's one thing. The COVID compliance officer, like I said, you can, if you're a member, you can get a discount code for that. There's also a pandemic compliance advisor. And a pandemic compliance advisor is actually more for the front of house. It's actually, the training is actually geared toward meeting professionals. But if you consider that every time we produce a show, we're producing a conference or a meeting, you can use the same ideas in that training. So the training teaches you a little bit about how, wiping down surfaces, and do you have more than one person helping you, making sure everybody has PPE, making sure that masks are on, etc. It's just a great way to parlay the meeting world into our theatrical world. Theaters are searching for leadership of some sort that helps guide them through everything that they're reading. I can read the CDC information daily. I can sit on 5 Zoom calls a day and still not know how to actually produce safely in my theater. And these two trainings, I think, are very, very beneficial and help create some guidance for people. So,
yeah, and I think it's important too to notate that this is not being trained by theater people. This is actually the medical industry. That is correct?
Correct.
Yes, and I think it's just a great feature. You make a great point. There's been a lot of expectation of us to be able to kind of handle our own problems, but those poor stage managers, they have enough to deal with. And
absolutely. Well, one of the big things with why this came out is because as shows were starting to get filmed in Los Angeles, they were trying to find a safe way to do this. And it's like, okay, so we need another person on staff that can actually do this, that is not doing any other job. This is their singular job. And they are responsible, and they're the first person on set, and they're the last person to leave. So before, you would have, the production staff that would stay there, the production assistants. Well, no, they're there before the production assistants. So yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that we're all trying to find a way to open up safely, because we want to produce. Our heart is in art, and when we're sitting at home, gosh, we just want to produce.
I tell you what, it is, it has been a long year, and my hat goes off to anyone who's even trying. And I know that there's been some successes.
It's just 8 months. It's just 8 months, baby. It's not even a year yet.
Are you kidding?
It's just
We
8
read
months.
about it. Oh my goodness. It's been with us for 8 months. It's been about a year now since we
exactly.
had some heads up to start acclimating
Understood.
to 2020. So, oh my goodness. And here we sit. And I hope we are able to.
Okay, I'm going to prep my food now.
Yeah, absolutely. So go ahead and move us through, Dennis, and let us know what you got there and how you're going about it.
I start off with, sure. I start with 1 cup of Greek yogurt. I use non-fat, organic Greek yogurt. I had this out earlier, and sorry if I make a lot of noise. I'll try not to make too much noise. And then what I actually do is I whip in some cinnamon.
Woo!
Makes the yogurt, because I'm not a fan. I like whipped cream. I don't like yogurt. So a healthy amount in there. If I can get that going. There you go. And then I actually sweeten this with stevia. And I use liquid stevia.
Woo!
It is a natural sweetener. Thank you. I use a couple of drops, maybe more than a couple of drops, but you know. And then I literally just whisk it in.
Very nice.
Hold on. I literally whisk it in. Has a nice little brown look, but it actually is yummy, yummy, yummy. Greek yogurt is one of the best things for you, and I can't stand it. So I had to sweeten it up somehow, and this is exactly how I did it. So anyway, you whisk it up a little bit. I've already cut some strawberries. I get a cup of strawberries, and I put it in there. And then I do another little thing. I add some more stevia, but I use the powdered stevia.
Ah.
And what I do, the reason I do that is because, again, I like sweet stuff. If you don't follow me on social media, you don't know that I love donuts. Anyway, so I kind of do a light dusting or a heavy dusting, you know, over the strawberries. And that's that. Now I already have half a cup of granola, and I literally just put it in there. Now my husband usually makes the granola. Because we're in here, that's our stove, if you can see that. That's our stove, and we can't really make granola in that stove. So I've been buying granola, but in a few weeks we're going to move in. And then I top it off with some almonds, literally.
Very nice.
Top it off with some almonds, and that is my breakfast, literally.
Very nice, very nice. So while you're whipping that up, I have a personal question to ask you from your bio. I grew up in Illinois, and every morning before I went to school, I had the pleasure of watching The Bozo Show. Now, it's my understanding that that was your career springboard. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Can you tell me a little bit about, A, if you ever got to play the ping pong in the pail game, or if you ever got to hang out with Bozo offset? And I'm very curious to know what he was like when that camera light wasn't on.
Well, so it's good questions. Let me tell you that. So Bozo the Clown was a syndicated show out of Illinois. The syndicated locations, what my area of the Rio Grande Valley in South Texas was one of the areas that carried the show. They would bring children into the studio that would be the local studio audience. So there was another Bozo that was actually a local Bozo. Exactly. And the local Bozo, so when the Illinois Bozo would say, we're going to cut to whatever, you know, they would show a local Bozo, but they wouldn't show his face.
Wow.
They would only show like a piece of him so that you wouldn't tell that there was a different Bozo. Well, the thing is my mother took me, or a friend of my mother took a friend of mine and me to the studio, and I was just in the studio audience, and somebody was playing a game. I never got to play any of the games. Somebody was playing a game, and they won something, and I was super excited. All right, now if you know me, I'm already animated quite a bit, so I was super excited, and the producers came back to my mother and said, "Can we use him again?" I actually taped, I think, 2 weeks worth of shows.
Oh my goodness.
I went several times to the studio, and even though I wasn't the winner, they filmed me winning. So I was literally the stand-in winner. Sometimes children, when they win something, don't know what to do. It's like, and the winner is Jason Leva, and he's frozen. I was excited for Jason, you know. And so that's literally, they had me come in a few weeks in a row and film a whole bunch of shows, and that's how I got started. I think my mother got paid like $25 or $50 for the whole thing. It was
Wow.
so it was not the actual Bozo in Illinois. It was in my local area. So
Well, I am flabbergasted that there was more than one. I can't even tell you. I religiously watched that show, and it brought me great joy and made me very tardy because it always seemed to go a little bit past when I had to leave.
I had no idea. I thought the one that I was filming was the real Bozo. Because I had no idea. I mean, I was 10, 11 years old, something like that. I was a child. Not until I was later in life did I even learn about syndication,
Right.
you know, how that even works, you know. So, yeah.
Well,
that's how I got started.
That is amazing. And what a fabulous story. You know, those morning shows are such a part. It's something I miss terribly, even today, about Saturday mornings. I know there's the Cartoon Network and all of that sort of stuff. But
it's different, yeah.
It seemed so much more pure when there was just one of 3 channels that was able to find a good Bugs Bunny cartoon or Bozo the Clown in the morning. So it just seemed to make it a lot more special. So, all right, Dennis, it looks like you're about ready there. I'm assuming you're going to mix that up and put a little.
No.
Oh, you
no.
Do you?
I'm too OCD. It needs to look pretty.
It
my
does
granola
look
falls
gorgeous. I have to say. Now, I'm curious. I've asked this of a couple people. What are you most looking forward to indulging in whenever things get back to normal? Is it making your own granola, or is there a place or a product that you're excited to get back to once things get back to normal a little bit?
I've actually been pretty conservative in staying home. So I've not gone very many places. I go to, to the superstore every once in a while. All of our groceries are delivered. You know, I went to a wedding in September. 14 days later, I had a birthday. I went to dinner, early dinner outside. And then 14 days later, we celebrated my husband's birthday at a restaurant, masked, everything. 14 days later, we went to a movie in an inside movie theater. And so now I'm quote unquote quarantining until Thanksgiving, 14 days to Thanksgiving. So I'm actually looking to not having to count how many days I've been out.
Right.
And aside from moving in, I mean, obviously I'm ready to move into our house, but I want to be able to say, oh, you know what? I want to go to a movie today. Let's go. Not, okay, how many days has it been? Or I want to go to a restaurant. Now, we don't cook a lot. Let me rephrase that. I don't cook a lot. My husband does. So this little stove, and we have some induction plates. That's how we've been cooking. We've been supporting the local economy like nobody's business. Every meal is literally delivery of some sort. We just, we go and pick things up and bring them home. But we've only eaten at restaurants just a few times. So I'm really looking forward to going to a restaurant and not having to worry whether I have 14 days of something before I have to do anything. So,
Do you have a favorite?
And I also have a green tea latte. So I brewed my green tea in my Keurig, and I put a little bit of almond milk in there and some more stevia because, I like sweet stuff. And then I use my little frother to give it a little bit of a froth. And I'm going to try to do it without making a big mess here, but let's see if I can do it. Yeah, there you go. It gives it a nice little froth, and there you go. So
very nice, very nice.
I'm ready to eat.
All right, so I'm going to give you my presentation here. Now, I just cut my little
Yeah.
sandwich up there and grilled it there in the skillet. There's the meatloaf. And then my secret ingredient today, ooh, is some barbecue sauce. 1934
I've never had it with barbecue sauce. That's
barbecue
interesting.
sauce. Got that at Trader Joe's. You can't go wrong. There's some good stuff. It is a Texas blend as well. So that's mine right there. So, Dennis, I got a couple more questions for you, and then we'll get down to eating. These are the important ones.
Okay.
What helpful community resources are you seeing or using personally or professionally? And how can your organization be assisted or provide assistance to other artists and organizations?
I find that more and more theaters are needing to educate their boards, their board of directors, and I'm finding more theaters are asking me, "Hey, can you help us?" And I don't know that enough people know, enough members know, and that's on us, but know that they can actually ask for help. That's what we're here for. I have 20 years of nonprofit experience. I'm helping people understand their bylaws. This is a great opportunity to restructure some stuff because there's nothing going on.
That's a great.
So some of the resources I use is I go to a lot of nonprofit consultant, like Joan Gary. She's a great nonprofit consultant. She actually has some great training that I've taken to help myself understand a little bit more about what everybody in the country is doing, not just our sector in the live theaters, but I mean, sectors all across our country that are struggling, even the big nonprofits. I think what a lot of people forget that most theaters are nonprofit organizations, and we all need assistance. So that is one of the big things for me. I'm always looking for nonprofit guidelines that help me guide others to find a better solution. But being able to say, you know what, we know this pandemic is going on. We don't have to produce as long as we have enough money to pay salaries or pay the rent and keep the lights on. Let's see what we can do about restructuring who we are. I'm doing a training, like I said, in a few weeks. The theaters asked me to come down because they want to talk about how they've structured their board. They actually want to talk face to face. They're like, we want to know how we've structured our board because we think this is a great opportunity for us to change the way we look because we were struggling before. So, yeah.
Nice, nice. And probably the most important question of the day, how do we find Texas nonprofit theaters? Where can we get this information and use those resources that you have to offer?
Yeah, you can just go to our website, texastheaters.org, and we do use the British spelling of theaters, so it's Texas, THEATRES.org. We're on all social media. You can literally just type in Texas Nonprofit Theaters. You'll get several options. There is an actual Texas theater, so you want to make sure that you use the S because we are plural. We're here to service all theaters. So Texas Nonprofit Theaters pretty much anywhere.
Awesome. And I want to give you an opportunity. You also are a performer as well. I follow you on Instagram myself. Some wonderful insight for health and happiness there as well. Give us a pitch as to how we can keep up with you personally.
I'm on all social media under Dennis Yslas. Literally. Awesome. Super, super simple.
Dennis, some fabulous information. I can't thank you enough for taking the time. This is where we get our little spoons and forks. I'm going to use a fork today because I love this barbecue sauce, and I'm just going to kind of smother my sandwich in it. So
that sounds good. Well, because I'm such a social media person, I'm using an app to actually take a picture of my food.
Well, of course you are.
So I'm going to take a picture of my food. Of course I am. It's how I am.
I follow you personally, and I take you up on much of your advice, and I encourage people to do the same. There's some great stuff out there. All right, Dennis, any words of wisdom for anyone as you take that first bite?
Be safe.
Fair enough. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that does it for another episode of Box Lunch. We'll be back next Monday with a special holiday edition, so stay tuned. Be safe out there, everyone. Be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks again, Dennis. Bon appetit, everybody. Have a great Monday. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.